good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another Travel Mole broadcast. And today we're talking technology, and one of the most important technologies if you're a passenger going through a port of entry, and that's the hassle that one has to put up with when you're going through all sorts of security. And in this post-pandemic world, or in this pandemic world that we're in now, that hassle would appear to be more than ever. Horror captures my mind of the thought of being in a queue for about 5 years trying to get through Heathrow Airport. But I think that's not the reality. And the man to tell me it's not the reality is Mitul Ruparelia. I think I've got that pronunciation completely wrong. But anyway, and he is the Vice President of Sales for India and EMEA for a company called Visionbox. And they're the people that are revolutionizing this. Good morning, Mitul.
Good morning.
How are you doing?
Very well. Having just come back from leave and having actually been on a flight back within the last 24 hours, I'm doing pretty well.
And where did you fly back from?
I flew back from Italy.
All right. Well, you're based in Portugal. That's not too bad. You could have walked. You could have got on your bike and done that. Let's be honest.
I could have, but it's not so much of a challenge as we might still think it is. I think the world is starting to reopen, and that's very encouraging to hear.
Yes, indeed. Tell me a little bit about Visionbox, where it started. I know you're based in Portugal, which, as I mentioned in our little pre-broadcast chat, is not world renowned for its technology. As far as I'm aware, I might be completely wrong. Please correct me if I am. But how did it start?
Yeah, no. So Visionbox started about 20 years ago. We are headquartered in Lisbon, Portugal. And it very much was founded by two individuals with a view of looking for a bit of technology that did not exist in the market. And that was to provide CCTV and border control solutions. And because it didn't exist in the market, they decided, well, to go away and build the hardware, to build and assemble the technology, and to offer that to our end customers as we have today. So we are, if I may refer, we are a global biometric solutions company. And we're very much right now dedicated in improving security, convenience, and efficiency for airports, airlines, and border control. And in terms of our sort of global presence, we're probably present in more than 100 international locations across the globe. And that typically ranges from your airports, your seaports, your land ports. So when you talk about Heathrow Airport, of course, we are at Heathrow Airport when you come into the arrivals.
Excellent. And just to clarify, your technology is based on the fact that I might fly into Heathrow from, so let's say, Lisbon, and at the moment, as far as in my mind, I have to go up to either a machine or a human. They check my passport. They say, yes, you're good to go, and through I go. Nowadays, with pandemic, there might be one or two other checks, but that essentially is the technology that I might go through a machine, and they look at my face to check that it's similar to the one on my passport. That's basically the technology that you're involved in.
Correct, and that's what we mean by biometrics. So,
yeah,
if to give that example, when you arrive at Heathrow Airport, you present your passport. So we read the passport, we check the chip on the passport, and then we do a facial recognition to just make sure the person that stood in the gate is the same person that's on the passport. And equally, we can do other background checks in conjunction with the customer, in this case, the Home Office.
Now, in terms of level of sophistication over the years, certainly in the last 4 or 5 years, there's no doubt about it. And I did travel quite a lot. The passage through that type of, it's still hassle getting all your luggage done and everything, but in terms of passport control, yes, it is a much smoother journey, if you forgive the pun, through that. And that's really down to technology. Where do you think, presumably in the pandemic though, and the need to check things like double vax, NHS passes, EU green passes and stuff, have you started to get involved in that to make that smoother as well?
Yeah, I think what we've seen is over the last 18 months, or predominantly during the pandemic, the work that we have been involved in has been further accelerated. We've had a lot of interest from clients all over the world. There was not one single market where this was not a requirement, to effectively deliver a sort of a seamless, contactless way of processing passengers. On one hand, you've got this scenario where you've got people laid off on furlough schemes. And on the other hand, you've got, how do you instill confidence? How do you encourage people to come back into the airport and use and travel again, which is fundamentally a necessity to re-establishing the economy. So providing the means of being efficient, providing an element which is reinstilling the confidence, we've almost been kind of crucial with a lot of our customers in resuming operations.
Very good. And is there a call for almost like a mini version of your technology? So for even like going into a theatre or going to a nightclub or going in a football stadium or something like that, you know, that there's a quick check. I mean, I went to a couple of the games during the Euros here in the UK, and it was all manual and it's very tedious. And I know it's fairly late in the day for them to suddenly get loads of technology, but there was lots of scanners around for tickets and stuff, but it's still seemed slow, for want of a better word.
No, I know exactly what you're talking about. The short answer is the technology that we use to protect the border of several different countries, including the UK, Dubai, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and so on, is the same sort of technology that could be applied in a much more smaller, scalable model for, let's say, football stadiums and events and theatres, as you rightly pointed out. However, we've had a challenge on our side in that we wanted to remain focused on the aviation industry and with border control during the pandemic. However, we do have plans to potentially expand that capability to other areas, to other venues, if you like.
Okay. Now, in terms of you know, daydreaming, blue sky thoughts, I mean, surely in your company you must do that and think, where can this technology, where can artificial intelligence, you obviously already deploy that with facial recognition, where could that get us in the future? Is it possible that in the future, you know, it would be almost like a completely unfettered entrance and exit from an airport? Maybe you have to go through, you know, go under or through some sort of scanner, a bit like when you get on the lake and you have to do all that business with your arms up and stuff. But you know, in essence, you don't see anybody, you don't speak to anybody, you just walk through. And if there is a problem, then all the alarms will go off because of your technology. And the exit and entry into a secure area for an airport would actually be, as I say, almost unfair. You know, it would still be secure, but you know, there would be virtually no inhibitants to it other than you're a naughty boy or a girl and you've got something dodgy about you.
Yeah, no, you've almost described, I wouldn't say almost a vision, it's almost becoming more and more the reality, which is, you know, if I give you the current landscape of travel today, with most of the airports as we see it, is you present your boarding pass, you know, at point of checking in, you present your boarding pass at point of dropping off your luggage. You do the same as you go through pre-security. You do the same when you go to duty free in some countries, and you do the same before you board the flight. And even when you get on the flight, you've got to show your ticket just so that the air hostess can actually point you to the right seat. You're almost constantly having to prove yourself, and you've effectively got an individual on the other side that's looking at either your passport picture or looking at this boarding pass, which might be on your mobile phone, and trying to make that sort of assessment, that judgment. So there is human error, but it's also not efficient by any means. And from a user experience, it's nowhere efficient. It's not ideal. You know, I don't want to have to constantly prove that I am me. You know, I should do it once, but eventually I should be sort of registered and known to the airport that I'm traveling with, and certainly the airline I'm traveling with. So to answer your question, we believe, and we are seeing it more and more, in having this sort of frictionless way of using your face, which is probably the unique identifier, as well as other forms of biometric modality. So it could be your iris, it could be your fingerprint, to prove your identity. And you shouldn't need to do it constantly. We think the face will probably is probably the most easiest, because it means that you're not having to look anywhere, you're not having to physically touch anywhere. We can have cameras scattered in all sorts of parts of the location of the airport so that we can do the necessary detection. And we think, you know, from a challenging perspective as we see it right now, is the pandemic has resulted in airports and airlines seeing sort of, let's call it rock bottom volumes of travelers. And we're now seeing and hearing forecasts from our customers which are looking to ramp back up. So if I look at some of the Asian markets that I'm responsible for, they're expecting domestic travel to almost be around 80 to 90% by Q1 next year. And by Q2, Q3, they're expecting international volumes to be picking up to what they were pre-COVID levels as well, which is very interesting. But at the same time, we know that real estate, airport real estate, is finite and can only be expanded to a certain extent. And you've got potentially the rules that are being imposed on everyone, i.e. the social distancing, the checks that need to be done. So there's additional rules that are going to be in place and probably will not go away for a very, very long time, because I think we might have to adjust the way we live. So how can you minimize contact? How can you streamline the entire process? And how can you do that with the current real estate, and in a scenario where airports, airlines don't have to charge more? Because if they're charging more, that cost is only going to be passed back on to the traveler. So we need to make it efficient and cost efficient.
Very good. Do you ever get involved in, you know, I've sort of read a little bit about this in the lead up to this chat, but one of the, if you like, pseudo political issues about facial recognition is racial profiling and things of that nature, where companies or countries or airports might use the technology for, I hesitate to use the word, but sinister reasons. Do you ever get involved in any of that sort of chat?
It's a very political one for sure, and not one that we do get involved in. Perhaps to give a bit of context around the technology that we provide the means of capturing a face or a biometric token, you know, so we could potentially capture your fingerprint, capture your face, capture your iris. And the way we do that is by effectively creating sort of a template of your face. So we can measure the distance between your eyes. And again, you have unique parameters, you're registered on the system. Now, there is what we call biometric matching algorithms, or let's say the sort of technology that's used to identify one person from another. We have our own algorithm, but we also use algorithms of other vendors. So we are completely vendor agnostic when it comes to the actual matching software. It's political because we think it shouldn't be used for the wrong reasons, of course. And we've not seen it being used for the wrong reasons, particularly as it relates to airport security and travel. But it can be misused, but it's not something that we're involved in ourselves.
Okay, good. Well, it all sounds very, very interesting. It all sounds a bit of an old git like me. It sounds sort of a space age, but I'm very, very pleased to see it in evidence. As I said, it's much smoother going in and out of airports than it was certainly before the pandemic. And more power to your elbow, Mitul. It sounds very good. And thank you for your time this morning.
No, pleasure talking to you.
Cheers.